A pleasure to be joined by Bill Clark, who is an adjunct lecturer in health and wellness studies in the Decker School of Nursing, also an elite world champion powerlifter, a Guinness World Record holder. Bill, that's a lot to say. You're a very accomplished man and really appreciate the time.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. And the truth is, I really can't take credit for much of anything. And that I'm not trying to be overly humble here, but just thank Jesus Christ, God Almighty, for giving me the coaches in my life. That a lot of times, to be honest with you, Jacob, they found me, and it's kind of hard to screw things up when the head coach of the Olympic team is your personal coach, or the winner of the world's strongest man competition is your personal coach. So it's an honor to be here, and thank you for having me on today.
Of course. Let's start with the idea of developing purpose. Whether it's students, whether it's faculty, their daily schedules have been disrupted, and I think there's a natural tendency to feel stuck. Let's take it being a student, for example. You're a freshman, you just decided on Binghamton, you're getting comfortable, you're developing a friend group. What, from your experience, helps folks redevelop a sense of purpose in times of turmoil?
Well, that's a very good question. And geez, I think if I do this the right way, hopefully, you and I will team together, and we'll be able to give some advice out there to help people, to propel them to the best that they can possibly be. And there's no question about that. Things are disrupted, and to that end, whenever something is disruptive, to me, that's also an opportunity. Anytime there's a difficulty, because you cannot overcome what you won't confront. And oftentimes life throws these things at us, and obviously, right, with COVID-19, we have no choice. But hidden in these difficulties are great opportunities. I had a coach that would tell me, he would say, I'm trying to think of his exact phrase, but success is cleverly hidden in the ability to problem solve. Because as an athlete, you're constantly going to have to problem solve. The things are going to be thrown at you. You just can't script some of these things, as we're finding out right now. So as far as purpose goes, I think I always advise people to do something every day, and that goes with or without COVID, right? Because the rules of being your very best, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, they still apply whether you're in a shutdown or not. Just because the world's shutting down doesn't mean that you have to. So I advise people to make a list of 3 things every single night that you want to do the next day. And that helps me to define my purpose every single day. Put it this way, I don't have any trouble getting up in the morning because I've made a list of things that I want to accomplish the next day. And those are the things that are going to help me to become the best Bill Clark I can possibly be. And, I think as long as you're operating within that purpose, the purpose of being purposeful, right? If that's even a phrase, right? You're coming up with things that will help to inspire you. See, I like motivation. People call me a motivational speaker. I prefer to call myself an inspirational speaker because motivation tends to be very short term. No one laughs or cries forever. And motivation is based on emotion. So you can't maintain it. To me, inspiration is the much bigger picture, which motivation is a part of. But inspiration is inspiration involves discipline, motivation, and all of those other variables together that I think you need to have in place if you are going to become the very best you can be. And let's face it, that's the product of your habits. Whether the world shuts down or BU has to close temporarily or we go to a remote system, it really doesn't matter. The elements of being your very best still apply no matter what the conditions throw at you.
It seems like a good time, Bill, if someone is considering whether a change in their major, a change in their career path. You can be sort of on autopilot. And now there's an opportunity amidst these challenges to look at, hey, maybe I'm not so happy in this path, and now I can take long-term steps to fix it. Is that something that you found?
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Look, there's opportunities in everything that we do. And I think people oftentimes look at the word success and they perhaps they define it the wrong way. People think of success as always getting first place. And if that's and I'm not saying we shouldn't shoot for that. I mean, it's a noble goal. I found that the problem with that is you end up, some athletes or some students, right, put so much pressure on themselves to always get this first place. And I'm okay with pressure. Pressure is what forms the diamond too. I'm okay with pressure, but there's a healthy pressure and there's an unhealthy pressure. And I think sometimes people put too much of an emphasis on the product, and what they miss is the process. And the process is really, right, that's the habits that we build. That's the formation of the building blocks of who we are. And that's going to take care, in and of itself, your success. So if you focus on the smaller things, I think the big things come. And I'm probably taking the long way around the barn here with your question, but I think that now is a perfect time to look at your life, and perhaps find those weaknesses, those weak areas. And I say that because we are defined by our strengths until the moment that our weaknesses become exposed. And what I found is that because of people's schedules, they never really take the time. I think they have the time, but they don't take the time to prioritize developing those weak areas. And I think now would be the perfect time to do that. I mean, now we have probably more time than we've had before, at least for my schedule, I do. And I'm guessing for most people that would be the case. And to that end, if you're unhappy with your life or you're unhappy with your major, look it, change it. I mean, look, if you're not in control of what's happening with your life, then who is? The answer is nobody. It's you. So take a good look at where you want to be. And I always apply this thing I call the 10-year rule. You're not just living for today. You're living for where you want to be 10 years from now. And that's a very important point to make, I believe, because a lot of people sacrifice the long term for the short term. But then when that long term does eventually come, and we're hoping it does, what you've done in the past has led up to, you are the sum total of the events of the past that have led to your point in the future, if that makes any sense. So I think for sure, I mean, now is the time to look and ask yourself some very important questions. Is this what I want to do? What's the job market going to be like? Am I going to be happy? What are my priorities? I have some friends of mine, they're great people, and I love them to death. They chase the dollar all the time, and and what I found is that it's too much is never enough. So they're never really satisfied. Which, on one hand, as an athlete, that's what you do, right? You're never satisfied. So it's I think you just have to be careful what you chase. Make sure you understand the race that you're entering and where that finish line is, and make sure you're going to be happy when you cross it. Because I've found far too many people that have gotten what they wanted, and when they finally reach the prize, go, you know what, I don't like what I've attained. And then I find other people too who get exactly what they attained, but the bullseye was so low that they still end up unhappy anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, it's a proper balance.
What are the things, Bill, from a physical standpoint, to go back to your previous career? And I hear from people, I'm tired of taking that walk around. I'm getting outside, but I'm bored with my surroundings. I feel like things are repetitive. There's that Groundhog Day approach. How do people keep their physical routines fresh and invigorating?
By doing exactly that, by keeping them fresh and invigorating. Right? Well, let me elaborate a little bit. Right?
Yes.
So I used, in the powerlifting world, I used what was called a conjugate system, because, and I don't care, and this is a student right now may be looking at this or listening or viewing and saying, this is all great. This is great, information from an athlete perspective, but what does it have to do for me? And I'm going to tell you right now, almost everything. I'm not going to lie and say it has everything to do with it, because it doesn't. But it has an awful lot to do with it, because the mental approaches, the strategic approaches of becoming your very best in any field, they transcend the restrictions of a job description. They go way beyond that. So what I found is, and I'm going to get back to your question here, but what I found is the same mental approaches that I used, for being a power lifter, I'm using for my motivational speaking. Right? You prepare. And I don't think there is anything as over preparing if you do it the right way. You just have to be optimal. I use the same strategies as a lecturer at BU. The same mental approach that I used for one works very well for everything. At least I say that with all humility, I hope. Mm-hmm. It's worked very, very well for everything I've done. Now, going back to the question there, having prefaced it enough, the conjugate system is where you are changing things every 2 weeks. Because your central nervous system, and I don't care who you are, I don't care what you do, we all have very similar mechanics to our structures, right? So to our beings. The central nervous system is responsible for adapting to everything we do in this world. And if I asked you, if you were hungry for a pizza and I gave you 5 of them, right? The first piece would probably be awesome. But there would be a law of diminishing returns every time you had another piece, until eventually it would become a negative return, where you would start to feel sick, right? You'd be like, Bill,
Right.
please take the pizza away.
Yes.
It's the same thing.
Yes.
It's the same thing with physical training, right? You have to vary it. And that's the key, I believe, to increases in strength. And I'm not talking now just about physical strength. I'm talking about mental strength, emotional strength, because those are different too. Spiritual strength, you must vary the stimulus.
Great way to end. Bill Clark, thanks so much for your motivation, inspiration, and most importantly, strong guidance at this trying time.
Well, you know what? If I can be a source of strength to people, it's an honor to do so. And thank you very much for having me on today. It's been my pleasure.